There was a time when people measured their suffering very differently. They suffered because they were born into limits, into fixed lives, into futures already decided. You were a farmer because your father was one. You were a wife because there was no other social grammar available. You lived inside a narrow corridor and spent your life pushing against its walls. Today, that corridor has caved in. And instead of relief, many of us feel something closer to vertigo. Because freedom, when it becomes limitless, does not feel like lightness. It feels like exposure. You are not fighting fate now. You are standing in front of 1,000 possible selves, each asking why you did not choose them. We rarely name this pressure honestly. We call it burnout, we call it indecision, we call it lack of motivation. But underneath all of it is a muted terror. What if I choose wrong and there is no one to blame? Earlier generations had a ready answer for disappointment. They blamed society, family, God, circumstances. Today, we have been handed authorship of our lives, and authorship comes with accountability. Every choice is autobiographical. If your life feels small, it is assumed you wrote it that way. It reminds me of this movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once. This movie understands this anxiety with brutal clarity. It does not ask, what if you could be your best self? It asks something far more destabilizing. What if you had to look at every self you abandoned? This is not fantasy as escape. This is fantasy as confrontation. The film does not seduce us with better lives. It overwhelms us with alternatives. And in doing so, it mirrors something deeply contemporary. In the film, the problem is not failure, it's comparison. Every version of life is placed side by side. Success does not redeem sacrifice because you can see a version where you had both. This is exactly how modern life functions. Social media does not make us want more, it makes us regret differently. You are no longer unhappy because you lack something. You are unhappy because someone else chose differently and it seems to have worked. Possibility, once visible, is now a form of judgment. Jean-Paul Sartre says something deeply unsettling, that human beings are condemned to be free. He didn't see it as gifted or blessed. Condemned is how he saw it. Because freedom removes excuses. If you are free, then what you become is, at least partly, your responsibility. Even not choosing is a decision you live inside of. This is why freedom produces anxiety. And it's not because we don't know what to do, but because we know we cannot escape authorship. This explains something counterintuitive about our time. Why so many people secretly long for structure, for rules, for clear scripts? Why rigid ideologies suddenly feel comforting again? Why people romanticize simpler lives they would never actually want? Constraint relieves us of choice, and choice, it turns out, is exhausting. In the film, chaos does not come from too little control, it comes from too much. The most seductive lie modern culture tells us is this, that there exists a correct life. One decision that aligns everything. One path that dissolves regret. The film dismantles this myth almost imperceptibly but decisively. Every life contains loss. Every path excludes something precious. Regret is not a symptom of failure, it is the price of commitment. What finally shifts the story is not achievement. It's not escape into a better version of the self. It is something far more radical in our time. Staying. Staying with the ordinary, with the unremarkable, with the life that does not justify itself on Instagram. The film suggests something almost heretical, that meaning does not come from expanding endlessly outward, but from turning inward with deliberate regard, with sustained awareness. Caring, then, is an act of resistance. This is where the story stops being cinematic and starts being personal. Freedom does not ask you what you could be. It asks, what are you willing to stay loyal to when there are no rewards? What life will you continue to choose once the fantasy of endless reinvention wears off? Perhaps freedom is not about keeping every door open. Perhaps it is about closing one and learning to live fully inside what remains. Not because it is perfect, but because it is yours.